What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show with me, Sean Sheehan, here on Sherdog.com. And today I am looking ahead to one on Prime Video 23, which goes down on July 5th over in the home of One Championship Lumpini Boxing Stadium in Bangkok in Thailand. And I'm going to run you through the MMA fights that are on this card. We'll have a quick look at a couple of the other matchups as well. And I think it's a very, very interesting card with some very fun fights. And the interim lightweight title in the main event, with the winner set to fight Christian Lee when he's on his way back. It says on the One Championship website, so good to hear that's a possibility down the line. And obviously two very interesting fighters here. Obviously one guy who's fought Christian Lee a couple of times and a newcomer to One Championship in the main event as well. But just before we get into that and look through the fights, I always come on this show, and obviously as people who've listened to the show before know, I cover a lot of One Championship and PFL and Bellator, and you know, even KSW, Cage Warriors and other people, although less so for them because as we know, they're on different timelines. And one criticism I have, and I think a lot of other people have as well, it's not just me, but not banking on weekends where there's no UFC, not making yourself the story, the fight of the weekend. And One Championship have done that. There's no UFC this weekend, no PFL, no Bellator. No, I don't think there's even KSW or Cage Warriors or Octagon. I don't think there's anything basically on this weekend, so they've made themselves sorry. I know there's the Diaz Masvidal thing on, but you know, the 10 minutes out of your day maybe. But this is the main MMA of this weekend, and I think that's very, very smart, because like, even, you know, if you're sitting at home and see myself tweeting or someone else tweeting about it, you're going to tune in because you know there's no UFC on this weekend. And that's the sort of thing that their own fans will always tune in for, but you'll get MMA fans that might be just UFC fans or new MMA fans into it as well. And I think that's very smart. Very, very smart thing to do. And I know one kind of do it the first week of every month, and maybe it's just the way it fell, but if either way, it's good. And it's good for one, and it's good that they have a good card on top of that as well. So, let's and I think as well, I've mentioned it a few times now this year. Obviously this is what the 6th or 7th preview I've done on the One Championship cards this year. We've talked a lot about it turn of the year. You know, Chatter was asked about putting on more MMA fights in bigger places, and I think this card is a good example of that, where the main event obviously is an MMA fight, and they have some of the you could say maybe 2 or 3 number one contenders in the other MMA fights as well. So very interesting there. And even, you know, some of the ones that aren't, we've Reug Reug in a kickboxing match, which I'll get to in a second. We all know a bit of Reug Reug, and people will tune in for that as well. And yeah, I think that's good. I think that's very, very good. So, you know, more the merrier in terms of MMA fights. I think the more they have, the more people will want to tune in as well. And I think that's a good way of doing it, and headlining the cards as well. I think it's very, very smart. So I'll just run you through some of the non-MMA fights, and then I'll break down the MMA fights for you. So the main event is obviously the interim lightweight championship between Ok Rae Yoon and Alibeg Rasulov, which we'll talk about in a second. But the co-main event is Ruotolo versus Joseph Sheehan from South Africa, who is apparently a teenage phenom coming in to take on Ruotolo. You obviously saw Ty's brother fighting in MMA last week. You know, there's been a lot of talk about Ty doing that as well. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on here. See if he can get through another challenge, and maybe talk about what's next for him, about possibly moving over to mixed martial arts. So, you know, for MMA fans as well, that could be interesting. Then we've Nico Carrillo against Sympathash Fairtex, obviously, who's always going to be and always is a crowd favourite no matter where he's fighting. But Nico Carrillo coming over from Scotland. I think the Irish kickboxer was supposed to be on this card as well, but I believe he's... Oh, no, I think he is still on. Sorry. Stefan Karody fighting out of the bantamweight division. Very, very fun fight. One of the fights of the year last year. He's taking on Alexei Bailko from Russia on this card. So he was very, very fun last time out, and I look forward to seeing him as well. Another guy I'm looking forward to seeing is Luke Lisi. So I was actually supposed to interview Luke there a couple of months ago, and it ended up falling through for one or another reason. Not anything I don't know, was his fight changed or something? I can't exactly remember why, but anyway, the interview fell through. But I did a bit of study on him and watched a few of his fights and stuff. Very interesting guy, you know, coming from a proper martial arts background. Like his father was, you know, the martial arts instructor, let's put it that way, in his own town, and there's a documentary about him and everything. And you know, I suppose he's a guy who did very well in America and in his locality, and is now going to the world stage and taking on these guys. And you know, it's been tough for him so far. He's gone in there, but he's very much held his own at the same time, as well as it being tough. And he's an opponent from France, Bampiar Kouyaté, here as well. So I look forward to seeing that now, and seeing, like, Luke Gleesy's one of those guys that you're probably going to be watching in one championship if you're a big fan over the next 3 or 4 years, and seeing what level he can get to, because it's all like, you look at some of these guys and they've 400, 500 fights. Like, you need to get to that level. You need to have a lot of fights. You need to get a lot of experience, you know, outside of America, wherever it might be. And I think that's what he's kind of doing at the moment. So it's fun to watch that. Ali Saldiev then is taking on the Black Panther, two lads we've seen a lot of, I suppose, in one championship over the last while. That should be fun in the flyweight Muay Thai. And the last one in is Alif Sor the Patch against Alice Barboza from the United Kingdom. So interesting ones there as well. The last one, actually, the last non-MMA before we get into MMA is Reug Reug against Mamadou Kamara. So obviously, you know, if you're tuning in here, you probably know Reug Reug. He actually already has a fight booked for the heavyweight championship against Anatoly Malyakin, the champion. So when I saw him fighting here, I was like, oh, what happened? I reached out to my guy Harry Williams, who works with Watch Championship, and he was like, he's just having another fight in the meantime. And I looked it up. I was reading on the website that these two lads are actually big rivals in the Senegalese wrestling, and they decided, apparently Kamara has been calling him out non-stop, talking a lot of crap about Reug Reug online, and they want to settle it, and they decided to settle it via a kickboxing match. So, you know, count me in on that one. I think a lot of people look. Reug Reug is just one of those guys that I think he captured the imagination a few years ago, and it doesn't matter if he's doing MMA or kickboxing or you know, Senegalese wrestling or normal wrestling, whatever it might be. I think a lot of people will tune in for Reug Reug no matter what, and I'll certainly be one of them. I think it's a bit risky though. At the same time, you're taking a kickboxing match. Okay, you'd probably favour Reug Reug to win here. His opponent, I believe, has never had an MMA fight or a kickboxing match or anything. It's all Senegalese wrestling with him, but so you'd have to favour Reug Reug to win it. But still in all, you're coming in here with another guy who's, I haven't seen anything of him, but I imagine he's a big, strong athlete like yourself. You know, throw one punch, land one knee. It could be, they might be looking for someone else to fight against Anatoly Malyakin. So very, very, I would say dangerous. Look, you expect Reug Reug to win. You expect him to win pretty handily here, but at the same time, you just never know, do you? So it's definitely risky, but look, when a guy calls you out of line and you feel the need to answer, well, he's answering. So we'll see how that goes down. So those are your non-MMA fights, and let's talk about the mixed martial arts fights now. And to top the card is Rae Yoon Ok against Alibeg Rasulov, as I mentioned earlier on. And I watched a good bit of Rasulov. This is his first fight in one championship. He's 14-0 here over on Sherdog.com, and he's one of those guys who's been around for a while. Okay, he made his debut back in 2013, but he had a few years off then, and he's been pretty busy, I suppose, since then. Didn't have many fights around when the just before, actually, he was out for a year, but just before the pandemic came around, he'd one fight in 2020. I didn't fight again until early 2021. So, he's been fighting in places like AMC, UFL, he'd have one fight in M1 Global, he'd a fight in EFN, but he had a couple of fights actually in M1 Global, but, nowhere massive yet, and, not many, I suppose, names in his record that would immediately call out to you of, this is a guy you might have heard before, or this is an opponent. Now, I suppose the one guy is his last opponent was Cezar Olejniczuk, who's fighting out of Poland, and he's had a good few fights in FEN and places like that. Fought against lads like Chris Fishgold and others as well. And he's a pretty good fighter, and he ended up winning that fight against him. And he looked good in that fight. There's no doubt about that. But this is, I think, going to be another level, and especially if he's taken on the cream of the crop. In one championship, he's going to, he's very much going to another level. But watching some of those fights, he's not the hardest guy in the world to analyze. Let's be honest. He is what he is, and what is he? He's a heavy top game wrestler, and I want to make the distinction, right? I actually used the wrong word there. Heavy top game grappler. His wrestling is, I describe it here in my notes, good to middling. He has some good takedowns. He does get lads down. In fact, he always manages to get lads down. Which, when you're A1 game, what's he great at? He's great at a heavy top game. He's great at getting chest to chest on top and staying there for minutes after minutes, for round after round. And what do you need to do that? You need to get them to the ground. And even though I said good to middling in terms of his wrestling, in terms of his takedowns, he still always manages to get there, whether it's a body lock, whether it's a trip, whether it's falling on top. That's that. I watched as many of his fights as I could on YouTube and elsewhere. There's maybe, 5 to 6 of those, 14 fights? And it's very hard to find much in the way of striking on him, apart from what he does in the lead in to his clinch or the takedowns. And what he does, he has a lot of lean back striking, right? So when someone kind of comes in, he throws his left hook an awful lot, fighting out of the orthodox stance, and he throws his right high kick. The other shot he has when he comes forward a little bit is a spinning wheel kick, which is interesting for a guy who's like, this is a predominant wrestler who doesn't really throw much of a jab or much strikes apart from that lead left hook and the high kick. It's funny to see him throwing that, but he very much, if you come inside, he'll dip down underneath and try to get the fight to, a double leg, but he usually gets to the clinch and he stays in the clinch for long periods as well. But as I said, watching these fights, there's no great, right? You look at a guy and say, oh, he's a great double leg. He's a great single leg. He's great at getting body locks against the cage. He's great at tripping lads or something like that. I don't really see any of that with him, to be honest. It's funny. I see all of it too, but there isn't a standout technique, or there isn't a standout like, oh, this is where he's great. He just manages to get it done, right? He just manages to get it done, and if one thing fails, another thing will go. So a dangerous guy in terms of that. And then when it gets on top, not much by the way of ground and pound, not much by the way of submissions or anything like that, but still and all, he manages to get the fight there. His record, as I said, 14-0, 6 knockouts, 4 submissions, 4 decisions, which, when I looked at his record, I expected there to be a bit of a spread, all right. I was expecting maybe a few more decisions, but maybe that's the quality of the opponent as well. And obviously, we have a big change in quality of opponent here to Rae Yoon. And just to run through what he's good at, I've obviously watched him a good few times over the last few years, considering he fought Christian Lee a couple of times and all of that. But there are two things, and if you separate them, it's almost better, right, to talk about him. So the jab and the pressure. He usually does throw his jab when he's pressuring, but I feel, and I said this before the second Christian Lee fight, and you saw it a lot during the Christian Lee fight, he needs to jab more, he needs to use it more, he needs to believe in it more, because it's really, really good. I look back on one of my old notes and I said, he's a good jab when he throws it, and that can be the problem for him in when he's winning, when he's very favourable matchups, or when he's much the better fighter, he does throw it a lot, but he just doesn't. Do you know what the biggest issue for him is? He doesn't throw it enough to keep his opponent off him when his opponent wants to push forward. Now, he is very good at pushing forward, but some lads rise to an opponent. For Rae Yoon, I feel like that's a thing he still needs to do. And look, it's very easy for me to say that sitting here, and he is a win over Eddie Alvarez, Gufarov, Christian Lee, Lowen Tainanis. He's done all right now, believe me. But I'm talking about this guy is, one of the best in his weight class. In in one championship or even in the world. So it's a very high standard. But what he does do is very, very good. Very good at cage cutting when he does. As I said, when he does it, he can do all of this. When he does it, he always has fast combos. He defends takedowns well. And against Gafurov, he defended him well, but he had issues in the clinch. And even with that, he has fearless power after being out grappled. Very active guard as well on the ground. So, if the fight turns into a striker matchup, there's no doubt in my mind that Rae Yoon will win that. He will push him back. He will land his big shots. He's a significantly better striker, although we haven't seen much striking from Rasulov, apart from that head kick, apart from the left hook, apart from the spinning wheel kick. But I think Ok will have enough to deal with. Now, can Ok stop the takedown? Can he get up from the bottom? Yeah, well, it's interesting. And I suppose we'll only know on the weekend. We'll only know then. My theory is that he will stop a few takedowns, but he will get taken down. And he will end up in the bottom. And he will, this is 5 rounds, I assume. I will end up spending 2 to 3 rounds on the bottom. But the difference is, as we know, at one championship, they score fights as a whole. So you have to be very careful if you're a guy like Rasulov fighting in, and I assume all the fights he's had so far have been via the 10-point must system, where he scores round by round, and you get top position, you don't get hit, you're going to win those rounds. But you could do that for 3 or 4 rounds in one championship and still end up losing, because Rae Yoon might knock you down in the 5th round or knock you down in the 3rd round or the 1st round. And it's very hard to get that back, especially if you have an inactive top game. As I said, doesn't land the most shots, or doesn't go for the most submissions or anything like that. But as I said, very, very effective and tires you out. Like, it could go the way of he gets to the 5th round and Ok is so tired he ends up finishing him as well. That could absolutely happen. But it's a dangerous game, as I said, to play under this scoring skill set. Under the scoring set, sorry. So what's the pick? I suppose I'm going to go with Rae Yoon as the pick. I will have a betting show out during the week, and we'll talk more about it then. But I just think Ok is one of those guys where he has enough of a skill set for me to respect him over a guy who is yet to prove it at a higher level and doesn't look like the finished article. Now, that was another thing I wanted to say as well. Any criticisms I have for Rasulov, he's only 14 fights into his career. As I said, he's been fighting since 2003, but, he had 4 years, 2013, but he had 4 years off in there, like, so, 6 or 7 years, okay, he still has a bit of experience, but at the top level, he looks a green enough fighter. Like, we normally see green fighters and their strikers. It's very odd we see green grapplers, but to me, he's a bit of a green grappler. And he could come on and off, like, give him another couple of years in one championship, and I think he could go to a different level. But now going straight in for a title shot, no, I'm going to back Ok in this one to win this. But it's going to be interesting. Very, very interesting. Right, the next fight we want to talk about is the heavyweight fight between my favorite fighter in one championship, Kang Ji-won, and Kirill Grishenko. If you haven't watched Kang Ji-won before, this guy is just fun. I love watching him. A bit frustrating as well watching him. He's one of those guys that you would just want him to rein it in a small bit so he can be unbelievable. But look, he's lost a couple of fights, he's won a couple of fights, and I suppose you look at the fights he's lost to Buchecha and Bintainen, 2 heavy grapplers, 2 very, very good grapplers. He's a great comeback in his last fight against Latif. He beat Paul Elliott, beat Amir Ali Akbar, and what he basically is is a heavyweight wonder boy. Imagine if there was you went to South Korea and you look for the best heavyweight that they have in terms of striking, in terms of karate, and you put him into the middle of one championship. That's what Kang Ji-won is. He is brilliant. I just love watching him. A very talented athlete. Like, moves so well. Hit that front leg kick, unbelievable. Southpaw striker. As I said, went toe-to-toe with Paul Elliott and absolutely sparked him. If he gets striking with anyone, it's problems. And I'll tell you that. KO'd Amir Ali Akbar, insane power, moves like a welterweight. Like, the loss to Buchecha, he took him down and double-legged him and submitted him. You know, wrestling didn't look amazing in that. Wrestling didn't look amazing against Tynan, although he was fighting non-stop with him. But it'll be interesting to see what Grashenko does. Like, I watched back a good few Grashenko fights there, and I was looking at my old notes from him and putting together my new notes, and I had Grappler down, and like, the more I kind of went back and watched him specifically for G1 is maybe he doesn't grapple as much as I initially thought, and maybe have said before, because a lot of his recent fights, you know, there's been a lot of striking in them. Like, okay, Buchecha, a lot. Recent wins, let's put it that way. Malyakin and Buchecha basically did what they wanted to him, but the Giantson fight, a lot in that. The Reug Reug fight, a lot of striking in both of those. So maybe we need to readjust what we think of Kirill Grashenko now. Maybe we didn't readjust back when he's fighting this opponent in G1 Kong or Kong G1. But Kirill moves fast on the feet. You know, if you're to pick this, well, maybe not, but he's up there. Like, he is up there. If you were to pick the top 3 or 4 fastest heavyweights the one championship have had over the last 5 years, he'd probably be in the top 3 or 4. You know, after obviously Kong Ji-won, after Malyakin, and you know, faster than Reug Reug probably, and with power as well. But he likes a clinch. He does, you know, grapples at time, but he's a long guy, longer than Kong Ji-won. Throws the right hand very well. You know, he did nearly choke out Giantson in that fight, but there was, as I said, a lot of striking in that. Goes forward with power and spins as well. Look, if you're to look at this fight and think, who could put out a game plan that could take away the best things of the other, you'll have to say Kirill Grashenko, right? And Kirill is going to be the pick. And he's the pick out of logic, but out of love, you know? I'm picking from the head there, but out of love, I Kong Ji-won every day. I love his style. I love the way he fights. I love the way he goes out and throws everything. He doesn't care if he's going to get taken down or anything. You know, I mentioned it earlier about... and if I didn't, I meant about no, it's actually, do you know what, it's in a future fight. We'll get to that in a second. But even, you know, even the same way with Oak, you know, happy enough after the grappling to keep striking, and Kong Ji-won is like that as well. And if the fight turns into that, it could be real fun, because Kirill can knock him out as well. He has massive power, but I want to see the head kicks. I want to see the high kicks. I want to see the wheel kicks. I want to see the leg kicks. I want to see the big jabs. I want to see a striker matchup here, you know? And I'm sure Chatry wants to see a striker matchup as well. So maybe you can have a chat with Grashenko before. I go, here, lads, come on. Let's turn this into a kickboxing match all night. It might be MMA, but no, look, Grashenko is the pick, but that's the heart over the head. I think he probably will get him down at some stage, and he could choke him out. Then we have a flyweight fight between Tatsumitsu Wada and Z-Way, whose name I always write down Z-Way so I can pronounce it correctly. But a very good fighter, and nonetheless, and two very good fighters in a great division in one championship that I always enjoy talking about, because this is flyweight, but we have a strawweight fight later on. Never mind me here. Vada is one of those guys, you know, that has got his chance in one championship over the last few years. Look, and he's very much taken it. He's the mistake I made was Vada used to be down at or Wada even used to be down at the weight class below. He fought Gustavo Ballart and others as well. And he's been in one championship now since 2018. How many fights he had? Well, let me just look here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. This will be his 13th fight in the space of 5, 6 years, with a year of that taken out for the old virus. Very busy. And, you know, Z-Way is a similar enough guy. Look, he's had a lot of fights as well since he came into one championship in 2000 and in 2019, and you know, he's won almost all of them. And this is this will be a fun one. You know, Wada has that open square stance with low hands. You know, throws that kind of one-shot power down through the middle. And it's interesting. I went back and I watched his fight with Demetrius Johnson. And you know what? He did very well in that fight. He was good in the clinch against DJ. He gave him massive issues in the clinch. And he was bigger than him, even though, like, it's funny, he's fought down the weights. He definitely did. He took his back, you know. But in most of his other fights, you know, the commentary in some of his fights, they're always like, oh, he fights this way because he wants to get the fight to the ground. And, you know, there's no doubt about it. He loves to fight in the ground, and he has a 5 submission in his record, 14 decisions in there as well. But you can see why he has so many decisions, because of the way he waits on the outside and waits and waits and waits. And that, as I said, that open, low hand, square stance, looking for the right hand. It's just that one punch, really. It's the right hand, right hand, right hand. You know, it's an effective style for winning decisions. Like, it's not the most exciting style in the world, but it's an effective style, as I said. Now, Z-Way at the other side, he is more exciting. He's a pressure fighter, massive power for his for his size. Like, a guy like that, you know, shouldn't have 12 knockouts and 17 wins. He really shouldn't. He shouldn't have 13 finishes, you know, in that amount of time. But he absolutely does. His fights, funny enough, as much as he has all those knockouts, they do tend to turn into jiu-jitsu matches, because he's always going forward, and, you know, he looks for the takedown, but his opponents also look for it. He's very good on top, but when people get on top of him, they can hold him down. The fight that sticks out with that is, you know, even there's a couple of them, but even Reese McLaren got on top of him at one stage. Danny Kinyard as well. Like, that Reese McLaren fight was absolutely crazy. There was hands going from everywhere in it, and, you know, he's just a very good fighter, Z-Way. Very, very good. I'm not sure on the pick on this one, to be honest. I think I'm going to pick Z-Way, and the reason I'm going to pick him is I think this is probably going to go to a decision, right? And who is the guy that's going to cause the biggest car crash in this fight? You know, who's going to land the bigger power? Who is going to do the most over 3 rounds? And I think it'll probably be Z-Way. I think Wada is going to have issues landing enough. If Z-Way lands a good few shots and Wada has to answer back, I think he'll have problems adjusting his tempo. I don't think he's one of those guys that it suits throwing lots of shots, you know? And he might have to in this fight. So I'm going to go with Z-Way. I think, as I said, the output. He's going to win this fight on output, but also the power in that output as well. The strawweight fight I mentioned earlier as well is the last MMA fight we're going to talk about today, and that is Minowa against Mayado. Two guys, again, who've been around for a hot minute, as they would say in one championship, and two guys as well that very much need a win here. You look at their records: Minowa 13-5, but has lost his last 3 to Ballart, Masuyang, and Jared Brooks. You know, very much 3 of the top guys at the top of the division. And for Miyado, it's been very similar. He lost to Yamakita, Adawang, and Malishiev. You know, obviously haven't fought Adawang before. Top quality matchup that was. There's no doubt about that. And you know, he is very much looking upwards here. But like, it's a long way. You know, the Joshua Pacquiao type of Jared Brooks type of level. It's very hard to get to that in one championship. You know, and I suppose we'll see how it goes. We'll see if these lads, you know, have what it's in them, I suppose, still at this stage of their career. You know, Minowa is only 24, Miyado a little bit older, obviously at 31, but, you know, you're getting to lose 4 in a row in a place like one championship, which doesn't have the biggest roster, and there's a lot of the smaller lads, I'm sure, looking for a chance. It's a massive fight. It really, really is. So Minowa very loose on the outside, I would say, sprints around, and, you know, he's another one of these guys that his you know, his fights tend to turn into jiu-jitsu matchups as well, because he's, you know, he's always he is always a guy who will fight the fight wherever it goes, right? But he loves to look at his record: 13 wins, 8 submissions. He absolutely loves to get that back control. He loves to get on top. He loves to win. You know, and it's you know, I hadn't actually looked at this before. I didn't right now, but he is a guy, right, who this will explain it. His submission into the second round with 7 seconds left. Third round submission. Second round submission. Second round submission. Into the first round submission. Into the second round submission. And 2 first round submissions. A lot of his submissions second, third round. And that just to me describes Kohan Minowa perfectly. You know, he loves to be in that fight. He loves to damage you before he finishes you. And it's a very effective side. Minowa on the other side then, he is just an active fighter. Combos, lovely uppercuts, in and out movement, but rushes in with power. Every shot there's power in it. Does leave himself open. You know, throws a flying knee as well, which against Minowa, is it the wisest thing to do? I'm not too sure. You know, it'll be interesting, I suppose. It will be very, very interesting. I think in this one, it's hard to look past Miado, but you know, let me just check his again. He's been submitted twice in his career. You know, one of them was the last time out. You know, I don't know. Miado, again, the heart maybe says Miado a little bit, but if Minowa can get the fight to the ground, it's very hard to see him not wearing him out. I think I've watched a lot of Miado over the last while and watched him against Alibeg as well, and thought like that this lad is such a talented fighter. He shouldn't, like, he's not a guy who should be losing 3 fights in a row. He really, really shouldn't. You know, when he beat the likes of Danny Williams and Alibeg and others, but you know, apart from that, he has been losing to the very, very top guys, I suppose. You know, as I said, choked out twice in these last 3 fights. Maybe the pick is Minowa here, but as I said, we'll see when the betting odds come out later in the week who the official pick will be. But at the moment, I think I'll go for Minowa. So that fight, and then, you know, just to reiterate that flyweight fight again, very, very interesting, because, you know, I said, you know, with 2 guys like Minowa and Miado, where one of them is always looking for the submission, one of them is going to be looking to knock the guy out. When guys like Wada and Ziwe, you know, I said that fight sometimes it could be destined to get to the ground, because, you know, Wada very good at the clinch and very good at taking guys down, and then Ziwe, you know, with the kind of the switch stance fighter that he is, with the good takedown defense sometimes, bad takedown defense some other times. He throws leg kicks. You know, he's kind of looking to getting down. And that's why I said, you know, him, like Minowa, the fight turns into a jiu-jitsu match invariably at times. And he does get caught a little bit. Like, both of those, I could see them being very similar fights, in that if someone gets... And even, like, maybe that's actually this whole card. Because you could say the same for Kang Ji-won against Grushenko. Like, if Kang can keep it up on the feet, he has a very good chance, but it's going to turn in at some stage to a wrestling match. Rasulov, he's going to at some stage turn it into a wrestling match, but if Rae Young can keep it on the feet, he very much has a chance. All 4 fights, you look at him and go, who is going to win that battle? Who is going to be able to take their chance? You could, you know, the 4 strikers, let's call them, they all have chances. You know, some of them have the 3 rounds. Obviously, Rae Young has the 5 rounds. It's every round starts on the feet, and can you take those chances you were given? Well, you will have to tune in and find out on July 5th, because that's when One Championship is, this Friday night. Prime Video in America and in Canada, and on Sky Sports here in Ireland and in the UK is where you will be able to watch it. All right, I will leave it there. That is my preview for one on Prime Video 23. Keep it locked to Sherdog.com for all your other coverage this weekend. For me, Sean Sheehan, that is it. I'll see you all next time.